We are entering the second section, which is about the manifestation of emotions in aesthetic experience. Emotions are vivid and fleeting, and humans want to preserve them through art. However, our emotions inherently resist being confined by concepts. When we try to describe our inner emotions, we fail if we use concepts. I am truly sad. I am really upset. Is it useful? Sadness and upset are just concepts. I feel a little melancholy is also a concept. You are labeling your emotions with concepts and trying to categorize them. Does this preserve that sense of melancholy? Free and easy, the flowers floating in air are light as a dream, the boundless silk rain is as fine as sorrow, the precious curtain hangs idle with minutes' silver hooks. Here it is, without using concepts. But it truly is very melancholic. We need to describe it. This is a melancholic feeling. Is it such a deep sorrow? No, right? We all know that it comes through the manifestation of art, and it cannot be labeled with conceptual tags. Even if you label it, it still isn't preserved. You look at the scenery here and are moved. Wow, it's so beautiful. Is it useful? If you want to describe its beauty, don't use the word beauty when you write about it, right? If you want to write about sorrow, don't use the word sorrow. So, the difficulty lies in how people can project their emotional states onto a physical object, that manifestation. This leads us to the discussion in our second section, with a key term being the manifestation of emotions. Seeing artistic creation is driven by emotions, we eliminate the initial misunderstanding of art. When we understand that art is an activity aimed at preserving emotions, allowing those emotions to be stored in the work and still be retrievable many years later. In this way, we have refuted the simple imitation theory. However, we must not misunderstand that the work is the direct expression or manifestation of emotions themselves. There is a saying, "Anger inspires the poet." Have you heard of it? This saying is only partially true. It means that your emotions need to be strong or deep enough to become the impetus for your creation. When a person writes a poem, it's true that they are inspired by their emotions, right? But to write a good poem, your goal is to clearly express every aspect of your emotions. So, how can you fully express them? Simply calling out is not enough, otherwise, a shout would be a poem, right? I may be angry all the time, but I'm not a poet. It's only partially true that our emotions need to have a certain energy, an impulse that needs to burst out. If you don't have this drive, you shouldn't write poetry. Even if this emotion is a kind of sadness, it still has energy. It's a kind of melancholy, but it also has a force, you know. In this sense, it's true that anger inspires the poet. Some people write poetry, and after reading it, I feel that they are just describing their emotions in a rather calm way. Their poetry doesn't have the power to move us. Because they are so calm, they actually include a lot of rationality. They seem to be writing poetry and expressing their emotions, but they are so calm and objective. This kind of poetry can be quite clever at times, but it lacks the power to move us, it lacks that energy. But having energy alone is not enough. Energy is a driving force, and then the emotions need to flow freely under the impetus of this energy. This energy needs to be strong enough, so that the creation of these images is not just a mere imitation of external ready-made images. It even evokes great imagination, creating images that we have never thought of, that are not seen in the everyday world. This kind of work is truly remarkable. The ability to create forms, of course, can be based on science. For example, after the Renaissance, right? Painting didn't strictly follow scientific laws, did it? Like perspective, the golden ratio, and so on. But if a work of art strictly adheres to scientific laws to create an image, it is not a true work of art. So Nietzsche specifically discussed this issue. Regarding the nature of art, he said two gods are at play. One is called Dionysus, the god of wine, right? And there's another one called Apollo, the sun god. Both of these gods need to be at play at the same time. If only one god is at play, we can only construct images that are harmonious, orderly, and proportionate. If you take away the god Dionysus, you take away the power of our emotions, then there is no art. If the power of our emotions just gushes out directly, that is also not art. Right? Nietzsche's earlier work, The Birth of Tragedy, discusses this issue. This tragedy is not the opposite of comedy as we commonly understand it today, but a very important literary and theatrical art form in ancient Greece, called tragedy. First things first, let's talk about how art is basically a fresh take on reality. It's not about scientific explanations or theories, but more about reinterpreting reality through emotions and imagery. Take the Parthenon's architecture, Bach's Mass in B minor, Michelangelo's Sistine Chapel frescoes, Beethoven's sonatas, or a novel by Dostoevsky. These works aren't just showing us the outside world or expressing inner feelings. They're more like a deeper kind of imagery. Behind these images, we're facing a whole new reality. Art isn't just copying real stuff or reflecting strong emotions. It's a reinterpretation of reality, not through concepts, but through gut feelings, not through thinking, but through feeling. So, awesome art gives us a fresh way to look at the outside world. It's not about fitting into preconceived ideas. It's about helping us see the world in a new light, to understand a piece of reality. It's the way art shows us how to see things, a kind of contemplation that's definitely thoughtful, but not just sitting around thinking. Let's talk about our actual aesthetic experience. Think about the following: when we sit in a concert hall and listen to an orchestra starting to play under the conductor's baton, the music flows towards us. The various sections of this orchestra. It has the string section, woodwind section, brass section, and such a distinction of voices. First violin, second violin, viola, cello, it has such a diverse structure. When we listen, we are in a contemplative mood. We are not just passively accepting this flow of sound. We make distinctions. In this contemplative distinction, it is not a cold observation. It is not a rational mind examining the construction of this work. At the same time, our inner feelings are aroused vividly and passionately. One of the most interesting features of this aesthetic experience is that it seems to unite two extremes: one is contemplation and the other is passion. In this unity of contemplation and passion, we achieve freedom in the sensory world. When we limit the sensory form rationally, we are not free, we obey the necessity of logic, we have to rigorously deduce and justify. But when our contemplation of that image is accompanied by equally vivid and powerful emotions, a sensory freedom emerges. Aesthetic freedom is not being devoid of emotions. On the contrary, it means that our emotions reach their maximum intensity. The relationship of the artwork to us, when we appreciate or accept this work, actually brings our inherent emotions to their maximum intensity. And this maximum intensity is achieved through the contemplation of the artistic image. It signifies an important occurrence called catharsis. In this way, we discuss such a connection between two extremes, contemplation and passion. It combines both through our observation of the artwork. Just like I mentioned last time, an old lady went to see the tragic film Dream of the Red Chamber 10 times, each time with a handkerchief. This heavy tragedy did not overwhelm the old lady, right? After watching it, her heart was relieved, crying very comfortably, right? It means that her emotions reached their maximum intensity. But she was not overwhelmed or constrained by the emotion itself. If we were the protagonist of the real tragedy, we would definitely be overwhelmed by our experiences. We have emotions, and these emotions are always not free, they are subject to the boundary of the experience. They oppress us, dominate us, it's a heavy pressure, a very heavy pressure. But in the artwork, emotions manifest as images, as form. In this manifestation, of course, we must grasp this form, but at the same time, our emotions gain a kind of freedom. So, Aristotle used a word called catharsis. What does it mean? It means that our daily human emotions are bounded by objects. These emotions, called objective emotions, bear material pressure. Through art, they cross the threshold, relieving the objective burden in our daily emotions. Real-life tragedy would overwhelm us, but in the artwork, this tragedy becomes the object of our appreciation, the object of our free attention. But it is still a tragedy, it is not without emotion. It is the maximum intensity of emotion, achieved. So, in this way, we have grasped the crux of the matter. A new construction of reality is through the phenomenon of emotion. We have reinterpreted this reality, this existence. What is truth? Truth is the essential reality of things. What does the essential reality of things mean? It is not found within the logic of the thing itself, but in the connection between that thing and human existence. This is what we call the primal truth. Thus, art is, in essence, cognitive. It is a way of understanding reality. However, this understanding does not come through concepts and logic, but reveals the original connection between things and our human existence. In this sense, it is cognitive. The architecture of the Parthenon, Beethoven's sonatas, Bach's masses, all these are displays of reality. They guide us to re-recognize this world or a certain aspect of it. This recognition precedes concepts and logic. It reveals the primal connection between things and human existence. When we discuss the unique qualities of aesthetic experience, expressing this quality as a unity of contemplation and passion, we talk about the relationship between art and truth, the primal connection between humans and things. This is the connection between human existence and things. Existence, according to Heidegger, is the understanding of being, and this understanding is not rational recognition. What's the deal with existence, you ask? Well, if we say that animals exist, that's just a scientific fact. When it comes to human existence, it's all about grasping the whole idea of being itself. We know we're gonna kick the bucket someday, and that's when we come face to face with nothingness or the existential void, so that's where we're at. This whole grasping of existence thing is what we call human existence. It's not about being all logical and stuff, it's more about feeling anxious and uneasy. Existence hits us with anxiety and unease. It's all about feeling the weight of nothingness and wanting to push it away. So, when we talk about human existence, it's more about how things around us are connected to our existence rather than just being things we understand. That's why this whole understanding thing comes before reason, concepts, and logic. So, in a nutshell, when we dive into the world of art, we can't help but see that it's tied up with the essence of life. And this truth isn't just about making logical judgments about stuff. It's about recognizing the original connection between things and our existence. This kind of recognition, to be precise, is called apprehension, and it comes before concepts and logic. We'll slowly but surely get a clearer picture of this. On the nature of aesthetic experience, why is it not just an individual subjective state that varies from person to person? Because aesthetic experience involves a mode of seeing that reveals the primal relationship between things and our human existence. Of course, we can now relate things to our life through technology, as we manipulate things to be useful for our survival. But this is not the original, primal relationship. It has become mediated by scientific, logical concepts. What we need to reveal is the original, primal relationship, and this is what is manifested in art. For example, what is the difference between a poem and an academic paper? Both use words. If I write a philosophical essay, you'll read the words I use, whether in Chinese or any other language. But will you just focus on the words themselves? No, because in an essay, the words are used as conceptual symbols, to point to things, to express ideas, to articulate logical inferences. The reader grasps the basic ideas, the argumentation process, the logic. The reading is complete when you understand the ideas and the logical relationships between them. The words themselves are just a bridge to be discarded. But when you appreciate a poem, can you do that? If you do, you have not truly appreciated it. You have not engaged in literary reading, you have only analyzed the central idea. Knowing the idea of the poem is not the same as appreciating the poem. The poem Climbing High by Du Fu, 8th century CE, describes the life of the impoverished and destitute Chinese literati in his later years. The last two lines capture the central idea of the poem. Hardship and bitterness have frosted my temples, quitting alcohol exacerbating my predicaments. I am sure everyone would have read analyses of this famous poem. Appreciating a poem goes beyond just understanding the words as conceptual symbols. The combination of these words reveals the primordial relationship between things and our human existence. When you read The Withered Vine, The Old Tree, Rooks in the Dusk, are you just appreciating it as a scientific description of natural scenery? And The Wind is Fierce, The Sky is High, The Apes Lament, The Shores are Clear, The Sand is White, Birds Fly Home, are you just reading it as a collection of concepts? No, the true appreciation comes from perceiving the original, primal connection between these elements and our human experience, which the poetic language evokes. It's not just a detached, scientific description, but an expression of the fundamental relationship between the world and our lived existence. The presentation of human existence, the living scene in which we all find ourselves, is filled with emotions. Don't regard the emotions of human life as a dispensable psychological phenomenon. It's best not to be disturbed by emotions, right? We should use reason to overcome emotions and maintain eternal calm and composure. This is how we live in the world. Therefore, Heidegger criticized the Western philosophical tradition and the study of the human mind. Why has the Western philosophical tradition always downgraded emotions? The first level is called cognition, the second level is called will, and emotions are the lowest third level, even considered bad, as they can confound us. This is how Plato saw it, so in his ideal state, he banished who? Poets and artists. He said, "Don't come in, you disturb people's morality, life order, and harmony by arousing emotions." According to Plato, when our desires, anger, sorrow, and other experiences should naturally wither away, the poet's imagination waters and nourishes them once again. This is not good, so they are expelled. Heidegger's philosophical revolution. It corrected this Platonic tradition. Indeed, every practice, every action and utterance that motivates us to live in this world is not rationality, but our existential emotion. Moreover, in our existential emotion, we thought it had nothing to do with truth at all, that truth only occurs at the level of rationality, that's how we've always thought. But now we see in art, it is in this realm of emotion that truth truly occurs. That's the original relationship between things and human existence manifested in the artwork. This manifestation is achieved through what? The unity of cold observation and passion. Through the threshold of art, through art, which is the threshold that human emotion has crossed, the original objectivity of the emotion has been relived. Crossing this artistic threshold, human emotion has gained self-reflection. This self-reflection is in the living, sensual image of the artwork. The manifestation of emotions is not the emotions themselves. In works of art, we are not directly governed by the emotions that the work displays. Whereas in our daily lives we are directly governed by our own emotions. In art, we are not subject to the direct influence of the emotions presented. Rather, through the work, we gain insight into the true nature of these emotions. This insight implies a contemplative state, but what is being contemplated is still the authentic nature of the emotions themselves, and it represents the most intense and profound emotions. I recall the borderland poetry of the Tang dynasty poet Cen Can, 8th century CE. That famous line, "Suddenly, as if a spring breeze came overnight, thousands upon thousands of pear trees bloom." When we read such poetry, do we not feel passion? We feel passion, but it is also a cold observation, isn't that right? And the true nature of this emotion is manifested through the poem. We can imagine the hardship of the border military life. A person who has lived in the South for a long time, when he goes beyond the north frontier, in such a harsh natural environment, seeing the snowflakes flying all over the sky, how does he write? Through this poem, he expresses his deep feelings. Although it is a hard military life, it is full of meaning. It does not prevent us from loving life, and that emotion comes out. Let us marvel at the tremendous imagination of such poetry. Thousands upon thousands of pear trees bloom, as if a spring breeze came overnight. The spring wind did not actually come, it was all in the poet's imagination, and this imagination manifests itself as the work. It is the manifestation of profound emotion, so when we appreciate this work, we are not making a conceptual identification or logical discussion about the relationship between external things and us. Instead, it expresses the most fundamental basis of our human existence in this world. The power of the emotion of existence itself, so it cannot be reduced to a third-level phenomenon of the human psyche.